they can be built off of. One of the things that threat modeling requires is building layer upon layer upon layer upon layer. You start with what are the risks, and you take it from there. One of the things that will make the meetings go a lot more smoothly is not letting the discussion spin out of control into what do we do to fix this. That's the developers' jobs to figure that out. Where you need to focus the regular meetings on is what are the threats, and how are we going to what sort of risk level are we going to assign to them. That's how the output of the meeting can be given to the developers so that they can actually implement and mitigate risks identified. One of the important things is to keep in mind is who the audience for the threat model is. Managers need to be able to review a threat model document and be able to understand that this system is secure, and that if there are risks present in the system, what are those risks and what is the exposure of those risks. Testers need to be able to understand it so that they can construct the tests necessary to do the condition checks to make sure that this vulnerability is indeed mitigated. Security review teams need to be able to understand the document to the point that they can say, yes, this application is secure, or yes, this application is secure, but there are risks present, and here are those risks. Threat modeling is not about closing off any risks present in an application. It's about cataloging and mitigating those that need to be mitigated. Some additional keys to creating effective threat models is understanding what the difference is between a feature level and an application level threat model. Working on feature level threat models is much more involved and reaches much more deeply into an application than an application threat model. Feature-level threat models are useful in cases where you need to pay special attention to what are the risks of this. Examples of that, stuff like authentication and authorization mechanisms. Things that you would do a code review on, you probably want to do a feature-level threat model on. Choosing the appropriate level for the threat model for an application. In a perfect world, the threat model would be as granular as necessary to mitigate any and all risk to an application. Obviously, we don't have all the time in the world to devote to security for our applications, so you need to make trade-offs. you need to be careful about cutting it too close and working at too high of a level and not looking at enough of your components, because if you don't, obviously you run the risk of leaving something open that really should be closed. If you have minimal time to focus on security, you want to focus that security on your input points. What are the entry points to an application? Whether it's a web application that has forms that take form posts, you want to do your boundary checking on those, on the inputs from that. If you have more time, great, start digging deeper. Some investigations, as far as looking at security, are best performed with a code review. It's difficult to do a code review for an entire application, but it's much easier to do it for the critical pieces of that application, things that accept input, things that determine access levels, things that divide information between users. If you use an object to hold user state, then obviously you want that to be as secure as possible. Where a code review is useful as well is in analyzing very complex pieces of code where it's possible that a developer overlooked something that needs to be in there. Some code is more complex than others. The more complex it is, the easier it is to forget something. And if something's forgotten, then the possibility exists that a vulnerability has been inserted because of that. By doing a thorough code review of those complex sections of code, it allows you to mitigate that risk. Code reviews are also helpful when the threat is implementation related and would be countered by secure development practices. I mean, let's face it, not all developers are security experts. Hell, very few of them are. But there are patterns and procedures out there for developers to use as guidelines for writing secure code. Don't accept input blindly. Don't check the length of an input before putting it into a fixed length buffer. I mean, things that should be common sense but aren't. Code reviews allow you to check up on the developers and make sure that such details are in place. Security pushes. Most of you guys probably remember the recent push by Microsoft where we're putting development on hold for 6 months while we send developers scurrying through their code to make sure that it's secure. We mean it this time. If the application's threat model is at a very high level, looking at only the most basic of things that it needs to, then having a security push may be useful for that application. In doing so, investigation of security of the application should be put off until such time that the code is feature and code complete. Basically, the code is frozen. Okay, let's take a look at it. This is not the time to be making any sort of bug fixes or feature changes. focus solely on security. One of the risks of relying on a security push to put security into an application is that the features won't be complete and that the timeline will not allow for a full breadth of security push to take place. I'm sure we've all run into circumstances where you're working on a project and requirements aren't solid and they're ever changing, and you bump up against implementation and you have to choose between, well, do we make it work or do we fully stress test it? When doing a security push prior to implementation of an application, that's not a choice you can make. It's not acceptable to say, well, we need to implement a few more features, so we'll just cut down the time for this security push. Hey guys, what's that noise? It's just a little noise every now and then, but it seems to be getting more frequent. Okay, just keep an eye on it. Penetration testing. Penetration testing can be used to investigate threats for application level threat models. What you do in a penetration test, obviously, is you simulate what is an adversary's view of this application. You can use either, you have two approaches you can use to penetration testing. Either you can give the pen testers full access to the system's documentation and architecture so that they have a lot more knowledge than an average tester would, or you can just turn them loose on it black box. Both approaches have their pros and cons. One example, one time when penetration testing is an appropriate security measure is when it's too costly in terms of either time or money to do a full code review of an application. A lot of times you have big applications that you simply can't do a full code review on. Focus in on the critical parts of the application and let the penetration testing deal with the rest of it. When you have to make trade-offs between what features are incorporated in the threat model, you want to focus in on your critical pieces. Critical pieces include sections of your application that handle access control. What is a user allowed to do and what are they not allowed to do? Obviously, if somebody can attack your access control mechanism, they can either impersonate another user or impersonate a system administrator. Auditing and logging. Having solid auditing and logging is critical to calling an application secure. If a user can maliciously attack an application, or if they are able to jiggle the handles on the doors to see if they're unlocked without being logged and audited, that's going to be a problem. An example of that is within a Windows system, you have the security log, and the security log can audit all sorts of information. But one of the things that you can do is you can make the system shut down if the security log fills up. What this does is it ensures that nothing will be lost as far as security details go. But one of the drawbacks of that is that if you're not paying attention to your security log and it fills up, well, your system's not available to the users until it's cleared.